Oh, yes, if I logged in. Hi,
Well, welcome to the No Show. My name is Andrea Edwards.
my name's Tim Wade. Welcome to the show. Joe Augustin will be joining us a little bit later. Here on the No Show, it's your opportunity to get in the know of the things that have been happening in our world this week as Andrea goes through key headlines and articles that are really from various sources that really paint an informed picture. So this is about informing us. And then what we do is we discuss opinions and we talk about a theme. What's our theme today?
Delivering delight during challenging times, which I think is a very appropriate theme for the challenges we're facing right now.
It absolutely is. And we've got a special guest who is a chief delighting officer. His name is Avi Liran. We'll welcome him to the No Show now. Welcome, Avi.
Hi, guys.
Avi's based here in Singapore, is a professional speaker, works with organizations across the globe with regards to helping their people and their leaders and their teams get a perspective of what it is to delight and how to do that. And he does that in a unique and amazing way. He's an extraordinary character. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. And I saw how you're delighting because I was in B1, G1 yesterday, and I saw that you have more than 3 million impacts done. And I'm very jealous and I'm trying to follow your footsteps. So you are a chief delighting officer.
Thank you very much. You've planted enough trees to save the Amazon, I believe. So well done. Keep doing that too. But thank you. In fact, we're all playing in the B1G1 world. Andrea is in it as well, and it's part of our arsenal of impact. I think it's part of it. It's part of our outreach of care to the world and doing what we can do if we can. So I think it's about being active, and I think that's what this whole show is about too.
And I need to do more there.
I think that you do this.
Easier done than said. Nice.
Yep. Nice. So for those of you who are just tuning in for the first time, we will talk a little bit about the theme, and we will go through these headlines. And should we start with some of those headlines?
I don't know. I think we should give Avi a chance just to talk a little bit more about the work that he does, so people have got an idea. Yeah, because he does so many things, and we both admire his work and his spirit. But he's also got one of the reasons I wanted him to join the No Show. He's also got a really unique insight. He's Israeli-born, and he has a unique insight into the politics of the time that might be different to what we think. He's been exposed to different information. So, Avi, just give us a bit more about you.
About me? Well, maybe the things that I could share a little bit about me is when I was 12, my father passed away just next to me. And that brought for me 3 realizations at a very young age. Number one, my mom was a little bit whining for the small apartment that we had. And for the rest of her life, she said, I was actually happy and I didn't know it. So many of the times we have so much and we just trying to do the pursuit of happiness, which is a paradox. It's an oxymoron without appreciating. The second thing that I learned, at the funeral, there were hundreds of people. And later on every year, it was just my mom, my sister and I. And that made me realize that not everybody is caring about what you do. Everybody is busy. So stop thinking that you are the center of the world. And if you want to dance in the rain, just dance in the rain. Nobody's paying attention. Forget about the criticism. As long as you don't hurt any other person, just do whatever you like without thinking that you are the center. And the third, it gave me perspective. When kids come and say, oh, I failed in math, what I'm going to do? I said, is your father alive? So with these 3 realizations, appreciate, do what you want, don't let the world stop you and try to do good on doing that. And the third is take perspective. Don't have all these storms and cup of tea. Do something good with your day. Maybe that's a good introduction.
That's a great introduction. Absolutely.
I got nothing. That was very.
But maybe I want to say that everybody in the world is a chief delighting officer, and it's a mindset to move from the fast system where we are frustrated and angry, and to make a conscious awareness to move into the delight system. But not everybody does it all the time. I'm not a saint. I made mistakes, I hurt, and I regret, because at the end of the day, everybody is also work in progress. So nobody can be delighting all the time. And later on, if you ask me, I'll tell you how to really enjoy that.
How do you define delight?
Funny that you ask. A lot of people define it with exceeding expectations and surprise. But for me, it's the habit of making conscious choice to contribute. And everything else becomes a result. Because when you do that, when you have the intention and the consistency of adding value to other people, the few things that happen to you. The first thing, you earn a lot of trust. You gain a lot of influence, not because you want to be influential, because that comes to you because people trust you. You become happier, and funny enough, you get to feel a sense of belonging. This is why every time that you volunteer for an association, immediately you feel a sense of belonging because you're doing something. People notice you, you become included. So contribution is the easiest way and the most profitable way. I say if you want to work for your self-interest, which is different than being selfish, just contribute. You're going to have more friends. People that deliver delight, there are three things that happen to them. The first thing, they make everybody around them much better. Everything that they send over and they give to others come to them often, many times more. Of course, there's going to be some people that are going to abuse. We're going to talk about that later if you have the time. And the third thing, you are much happier. You have so many more friends. And this is why when you do something good consistently from the bottom of your heart, this is why I will do anything for you, team, Andrea, Joe, because you are great contributors. You say, come to the show. I say, sure, tell me when.
Well, we're certainly going to have time to learn more about it. And I think it'll be very timely to talk about that after we talk about everything that's going on in the world this week.
I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, people might be needing the injection. All right, so we'll get into the news that struck a chord this week. And I, as always, want to start with a really great piece of news. So the 40 over 40, the world's most inspiring women list was released this week. And our friend, Susanna Hassenhell, was on the list. And exactly. It's an amazing achievement. And I'm so thrilled for her. I'm so proud for her. I just... my response on LinkedIn was like, wow, wow, wow. It's like amazing. But Susanna is just a person she's never given up. Her whole focus is, I'm here for the future of our children. And I'm just really delighted for her. I think it's incredible. And brilliant. Hats off.
That's fantastic. Who are
you
some
didn't
of
see
the?
It?
Yeah, I'm looking at it now. Some of the, I mean, she's there with people like the Prime Minister of Estonia.
Yeah.
I mean, it's amazing, and that is incredible, isn't that? I didn't know she was on the list though. Director General of WTO's there.
Yeah,
I was rejected from the list because I'm a man and I became 60.
You're not supposed to be on that list.
But you are on 40.
I'm going to reach out to LinkedIn and say all 40 of these people, if they're not already influencers on LinkedIn, they should be positioned as the top 500 influencers on LinkedIn. All 40 should be up there. So anyway, it's just brilliant. I'm just thrilled, and I wanted to highlight that. Okay.
That is
so
amazing.
Obviously, the main focus of what we're going to talk about is going to be continuing to be Ukraine, and it probably will be for some time to come. For the first time, we're not going to talk about COVID unless you guys want to talk about it, but I want to start from a position of hope. So as everyone who knows me knows, I'm not just reading and watching a whole bunch of stuff. I'm also watching social media and how people are talking and how they're interacting. And I've noticed there's very pragmatic sort of participation, people who can stand back and be objective, and they're just paying attention to the news. But then we have the other side where people are going into really, really deep fear. They're really struggling with it. It's having a huge impact on their mental health. They're terrified, and it's very difficult. So if this situation in the world is really crushing your spirit, just step back from the news. Go and take your dog for a walk. Go and be on the beach. I always want to remind people when there's life, there's hope. So just always keep that in mind. When there's life, there's hope. And the easiest way to do that is try not to sit in the fear of the worst possible outcome. There are so many potential outcomes from what we're facing right now, and none of us know what the final one's going to be. And I just really want to encourage everyone to focus your energy and your attention on the great stories that are happening, because there are a lot of great stories that are happening, and it also could become a story where we move forward as a united world. It could, right? So that's possible. So there's the saying, where your attention goes, the energy flows. And there's a lot of people who sit in spiritual sort of space, and they're talking about this, that if we could all sort of get our minds right, so if all the world's mind is sitting in fear, it makes the situation worse. If the world's mind is sitting in hope, we can actually contribute to the situation just by our thinking. And you may not even believe that this is a possibility, or something that's, it might be just far too woo-woo for most people, but when you sit in a positive place, it makes you feel better. So try not to focus on the fearful outcomes, because it won't change anything. It's just going to make you feel like shit more. The other thing is the feeling of uselessness. And if you guys want to jump in as well, but the feeling of uselessness is very strong. What can we do? I'm taking hope from the incredible unity that we're seeing around the world. And I think this is a chance where we potentially could regain our trust in governments that have been lost for a number of years. So we're coming together. Of course, not all countries are jumping in, but we have not seen this level of unity for a very long time. So for me, it's a really good part of the story. And of course, just the final thing is President Zelensky. And we have a leader in him, as well as his wife, who's also been getting a lot of attention, and he's showing great courage, but he's also being an example to the world of what great leadership looks like. And I think we've been starved of leaders like him for a long time. We've seen amazing feminine leadership like Jacinda Ardern and Angela Merkel, but to have a man sort of rise to his time, he seized his moment. And I actually think, one, it's going to benefit Ukraine and the war, because people are more behind it because they love him. And so that's a good outcome. It's a good story to be focused on. But I actually think the qualities he's showing will encourage other people to seize their moments, to step in and tackle the big challenge that they think needs to be addressed in the world. So they're the positive things that I've been talking about. Sorry, Don?
Can I take the contrarian approach?
Absolutely.
Well, learning from what Finland did for so many years, I'm not sure that the president was not manipulated to a place that he is now. And the West made an assumption that they're going to back him up, and he made an assumption that he's going to back up. But if you look at the result of what's happening, and actually he put his economy in jeopardy, his people in jeopardy. So I'm not so sure that by being resistant all the time, and coming back to the Jewish history, there were hundreds of warriors on Masada going against the Roman Empire. Eventually, after a long struggle, they built a dock, and these all hundreds of warriors had to commit suicide and then exile for 2,000 years. So I'm not so sure that sometimes if wisdom is better than courage, and diplomacy with someone that tells you, look, if you're going to do that, I'm going to invade you. So I'm not so sure. Everybody wants to glorify, but I would say that as a leader, it's great that you are courageous, but what is the cost of being courageous? What have been the cost of different things? Say, we'll pause NATO for 5 years. We're going to talk about unity and understand a little bit. I mean, if you can see that there are some professors in the US that after Crimea tell you exactly what's going to happen, and Putin delivers what he says. So have to look at the entire thing. Heroism, becoming a hero at the expense of the destruction of your country, might not be the great idea.
I suppose, I mean, I've been to Masada. I sat in Pontius Pilate's bath, so I know the story that you're talking about. Do you believe that he created this situation?
No, I think that the West should be ashamed, because the West pushed him to the brink of a war, saw this happening with hundreds of thousands of soldiers, did not back him up, just all these things. So they asked to go to NATO in 2008. All right. So all this is a ritual that is going on. There is a great thing. I think that you could put the link of what I sent you of the professor that analyze why it's important for Putin to have a buffer between him and the West. So yeah, we just didn't listen, and Putin said, "I'm going to do this if you're going to do that," and he did.
Yeah, I suppose okay. So you're absolutely that's a conversation that's part of today. But what I'm talking about is the hope in this moment. And while he's a leader of a country that's in the middle of this war that has many, many reasons for beginning, and you're absolutely right to bring up some of those reasons, but his role and what he's doing and how he's playing it, it's put Putin on the back foot because he wasn't expecting it. So I was talking about looking for hopeful moments, and for me, that's one of them. So you're not seeing the hope in that.
No, I'm seeing the hope, but there is a Stockdale paradox about hope and optimism. And General Stockdale is a famous story from Good to Great. When he was captured in Vietnam for 7 years and tortured, they asked him, so who are the optimists? He said, definitely not the one that thought that it's going to be over next year because they died from a broken heart because of unreasonable expectations. So I think that real optimism is in the middle, is doing something about it, doing something positive about it, not becoming total pessimist, sad and depressed, or delusionally hopeful. You need to be at a place where you're practical. You have people to take care of. The question is whether I'm taking a step back in this game and say, okay, Putin, let's put moratorium of a few years. Let's talk and negotiate. Don't invade, go back. That would be a more practical hope for me. Becoming a hero and then die and become a martyr, that's good for the history books, but that's not good for your people. But that's my personal point of view. And as my mentor said, once I had an opinion, and that was the worst day of my life. So your opinion may be right as well.
I mean, I get both your points. Actually, Avi's looking at a build-up, and Andrea is saying, "What can we do right now?" And there is an element of there was a bit of chest thumping that may not needed to have happened, but right now he seems to be the one that's rallying hearts. I think where Andrea is coming from.
That's not going to get the conflict to end. What we need now is a ladder. We need a ladder. So Putin can go down from the ladder that he is to bring his soldiers back. We need a ladder. We don't need a winner, and the win going to be for everyone. So all the media that goes, he's the hero, he's the villain, they polarize the thing. There's no consolidation towards the solution. So real hope is let's go for a solution that both sides can live with.
I absolutely agree with you, but I think this week has mattered because there was this feeling that this was just going to be done and dusted and over quickly, and it's not, which potentially creates more space for dialogue where potentially even both parties get something out of it rather than just Russia winning and getting what they want, because that actually would just create, well, we're already in the next Cold War. But yeah, the people of the world are behind Ukraine, and it's because of the way he's carrying himself, and that's an important thing. If the people aren't going, if our countries aren't going to put boots on the ground, which I agree that they shouldn't, because it's just going to escalate things. If they're not going to put their boots on the ground, then they're going to support, and we need people to support them to give them the chance.
That's a hypocrisy of the West. You help this go and escalate, and you don't even tell him that there's no way that NATO will support you. You send him helmets instead of sending him weapons, and then you expect him to win. So he's a victim of delusional Western and an aggressive Tsar on the other side.
I don't agree. I don't agree that they're not sending weapons. There's a lot of.
Now they do.
Yeah, and I think it's because of the character that he showed that they're doing that. So
I liked what he said, that he doesn't need. He needs weapons, not a ride. So that was
yeah.
Well,
one of the escalations that we, of course, saw this week was the nuclear escalation, and that's obviously something that everyone's incredibly terrified about, and it's really difficult to take that on board and sort of digest it. And it reminded me of the 13 Days War, the Cuban Missile Crisis. If this war goes nuclear, I mean, people are talking about the impact of nuclear. I was reading a report on India and Pakistan that the prediction that would go nuclear at some point. And in this report, basically, it was saying that only 3 or 4 nuclear weapons will need to be dropped, and global warming will hit 8 degrees, which is unlivable territory. So I suppose what we're all trying to work out is, do we have the first man on the planet who is capable of launching a nuclear war? And that's what we don't know, right? Because he's unrelenting. He seems to be unrelenting, and that's what happens in war. That's a positive, right, for him. But he's also given himself no exit, and we don't know what he's willing to do. So, and there's also several articles saying that the war's not going as planned. I was just reading that there's 63 kilometers worth of military tanks on the way to Kiev, and that's been stalled for 3 days, and they don't know why. Some other ones, he's been forced to fight on multiple fronts that he wasn't expecting. His miscalculations could see him strike harder, but then there's morale issues with the Russian troops, and we've seen a lot of information about that, which has been verified by Ukrainians. There's another article saying when you believe your time is almost up, you start a war. So, I mean, there's a lot of things happening that appear not to be in alignment to his expectations when he started this war. So it's sort of changed fairly quickly. But welcome, Joe.
Hey! I've been multitasking as I shouldn't be, doing another webinar while watching you guys. So I've been following the conversation, and I have one urgent bit of business that I have to go through. I need to get Avi to do his microphone right, because
I tried.
He's one of my clients as far as audio is concerned. So Avi, if you can get down to your settings inside of your, I'm sorry to do this live on everybody's time as well. The no show. Here we go. Settings down the middle. Go to audio and just make sure that you select the right microphone, because you're on Chrome. It does a different microphone than what you usually do. So that nice lavalier microphone of yours can be heard.
1, 2, 3, 7.
Wow, that's louder.
It's different.
Okay,
we're done.
1, 2, 4, 5.
Okay, yeah, that's nice. Good. It's clearer. Not so roomy now.
I think you have a problem with sequences and numbers there, Avi. Okay.
I'm dyslexic.
So, if you guys how have you been feeling this week? With the whole Russian nuclear escalation. The nuclear force has been put on high alert in Russia, the Western rhetoric was blamed for that, even though we weren't seeing any of that rhetoric. What any takeaways for you guys?
Well, what I was doing was keeping track of different points of view, and I was listening to what India had to say, or at least the Indian generals had to say.
Yeah, I listened to that too. That was a good one.
Yeah.
It was quite interesting to understand the underlying it all is this idea of who's prepared to go to war, and prepared to go to war in which way, right? In terms of what they've been trained for, what they've been drilling for. Because there is the whole thing about morale and everything else, but there's also how we fall to our level of training when we're pressured. And Russia's been preparing for this kind of war for a long time, as in like they're prepared to do that. And so there are people. I think if you ask who in the world is the most prepared to use a nuclear weapon, they are the most prepared. Whether that means that they're right at the edge of using it or not, but they are the most prepared of all the forces, I think, in the world who have one. They're the ones who are most prepared to use one. And I heard
that's
Avi.
an interesting narrative to perpetuate, though. If everyone believes that I'm ready to press the button, they'll sort of acquiesce to my demands somewhat.
And,
well, in terms of the training, I think in terms of what you run, you run regular training in this particular area. That there is this thing about how you can pull a trigger easier if that, I mean, it doesn't take the enormity of it away, but what I'm saying is, in terms of relative preparedness to use it, I think they've been training for it for a lot longer, in the sense that my feeling is that even if Putin were removed, you have enough people who still would go ahead with the plan, which is a bit scary.
Right.
I think it's too early to say. People say that it's not according to the plan. And I don't think that it's a coincidence that the people are there for 3 days with a convoy. And military-wise, it's easy with guerrilla fights to kill that line of tanks. And they don't do that. And maybe there's a reason why they don't do that, because probably doing that will give an excuse to go into Kiev. So military-wise, the easiest thing to do is guerrilla, get down with it. And depends what the plan is. If Putin's plan is to get the energy sources and choke Ukraine with the energy shortage, then there is a plan, and it goes according to his own plan. It doesn't go in life as much as he wanted, but I wouldn't discount Putin. All these headlines are too early to say.
Yeah.
I'm also, I heard you talking earlier about where Putin's been pushed, the corner he's been pushed into, and to listen to this particular answer he gave to a question about when he was asked or pressed whether he could guarantee no incursions into Ukraine sometime in the past, of course. He came back to talk about how NATO, or at least the West, seemed to have given Russia assurances as well about NATO when the USSR dissolved, and those assurances have not been kept to as well. As in, like, NATO has expanded 5 times. If you think about this, if you're always placed as the bad guy, this is a move against you. It's a move against you. It's a move against you. I've seen some narratives which I can kind of relate to as well, which is the idea that, hey, what happens when you push someone who is patient? I have no illusions about him being a patient man. I think he's a very strategic person, but he's
there's another question. Look at NATO. They united immediately to go to Libya, but not to help Ukraine. Why did they go to Libya? Because Libya has oil. Why didn't they go to Syria, where 660,000 people, the Holocaust of our time, is there? And the West and NATO are hypocrites. They just don't do the things and elude Ukraine that they can be part of it. So, and they went to Iraq against Russia, whatever, that there was no weapon of mass destruction. So Putin say, you can do this, but when I do this, it's not okay. So, well, every superpower at a time in history, when they had power, they tried to use it. Yeah.
Richard, what's his name? Richard Branson, Sir Richard. He wrote an article where he was definitely acknowledging the failures of the West. Somebody's got some noises coming back from somebody. But he also said it's not the time to talk about that, and we've got to be focused on the challenges that we are facing. But I think the resolution of this has to be part of addressing that hypocrisy and the actions of the past and the whole NATO conversation. So, let's hope, that this scary time actually becomes a time where we actually really do. I think there's been so much arrogance, towards Russia for a very long time, and now they're saying, right, well, we're not going to take this. So I don't know. But one of the videos you shared, Avi, was why is Ukraine the West's fault? And I know you started talking about it, and it's a video with John Mearsheimer. Tell me if I'm saying it wrong. Give us a rundown of the takeaways that you took from that video.
He just analyzes how did Putin get a red cape in his face, and why it was important for him to have a buffer between that. Now, when you think about it, there is a reason why North Korea is allowed to do what it wants, because China doesn't want to have South Korea on its border, and the implication of that. But it's really good to share this link of his video for other people to understand the evolution of that. It didn't happen overnight. And the problem with the media is that we get right and wrong immediately, but it's very, very complex.
Yeah. I'll definitely put that one in my weekend reads, and I'll watch it before I publish that. But I appreciate you've shared a couple of really good things with me this week. But
it's very slow, so put it on 1.7, and you're going to get.
One of the things that was obviously happened this week is Russia's become a pariah state thanks to Putin. But we've seen the protests growing within Russia. But there is also an enormous propaganda campaign going on, and any independent media or independent voices have been stamped out. We saw astonishing moment. The diplomats walk out as Kremlin minister says Russia was forced to invade Ukraine. Another video that I thought was really worth watching was Rachel Maddow, if you like her. She did a really sort of interesting sort of overview of what was going on from the perspective, from her perspective. And also the other piece of news that has emerged this week is war crime investigations have already started. Apparently Putin's breaking many, many international rules and doesn't seem to care. So keep an eye out for ICC to investigate suspected war crimes and a couple of others. His miscalculations may make him a war criminal. So these are some of the headlines. A thought leader that's really been taking my attention in the last couple of weeks is a man called James Dorsey. I'm going to include a couple of his pieces. One is Ukraine Lessons Not Being Learned. Did you guys have a chance to have a look at that one? I know there were so many that I shared with you this week. You might not have had a chance.
I've been a very naughty boy this time around, I'm afraid.
What did it say?
No, we've got too many to go through, but I wanted to pass the next one over to Avi with another video, What You Really Need to Know, which is another one by John Mearsheimer about the crisis. Two different ones, right? You sent me two different ones. What was that? Give us that one. Give us the lowdown. Avi. Oh, you're on mute.
Oops.
The same thing. Yep. It's basically the same thing that he mentioned before in Crimea, just updated and made it relevant for the time. People don't listen to that. And surprisingly, if the president would have had been more politically savvy, maybe just getting a referendum like Brexit for the East would have been easy for him, because later on he could win elections without the massive opposition. And maybe it's better to have a thriving Western Ukraine that is happy with a happy neighbor that is Eastern Ukraine and enjoy together. But maybe I'm just a small voice about there. But if looking at Mearsheimer, it's very interesting to see what he says, and makes you think whether there is who earns from all this: weapon manufacturers, oil mongers. So look at the trail of the money and see who has an interest that this will happen.
Yeah, always. It was one of my earliest lessons when I was in the army. I was working with a political analyst. He was in the same office as me, and he said, when it comes to war, always look at the money. When the world's in recession, we'll always go to war to bring ourselves out, because it creates jobs, I'm totally with you. All right, so one of the good stories, I suppose, so far this week is we've still got some feedback somewhere.
It's on Avi's at the moment, so I think the speaker is just playing back through his mic a little bit, which is why I keep muting him. But if we could just, Avi, if you want to just mute yourself and then come back in when you're saying something, that'll work.
Yep. All right, cool. So easy. Hopeful moves in regards to refugees. Okay, so first of all, there's some bad news about this that I don't think is getting enough attention. Basically, foreign students from Africa and some other regions not in Europe are not being treated fairly as refugees trying to escape Ukraine, and it's one of those Black Lives Matters moments, and it's not getting the media attention it should. And to me, it's a missed opportunity. Everyone should be treated the same with dignity in this moment. If Europe really wants to win the war from the heart, they've got to take care of these people. But we discussed it last week. We believe part of Putin's strategy is the reaction of Europe to an influx of refugees, and there's 1 million on the move right now. But so far, it looks like the response has been good. However, if it becomes a long and sustained war, then, that's when the real pressure will start to mount. But I think that if Europe can really step into this moment and make sure that the refugees are treated with dignity and are kept safe and secure to get through this time, I think that will make a huge impact on the outcome of this war. Just because, we're going to talk about the IPCC report, but 3.6 million people are at risk of being on the move based on the climate emergency coming up. So if we can start to focus on building the right refugee infrastructure to support people that need to be on the move because of the crises that are going on around the world. So one, we use this opportunity to do it, but two, also show that we believe in human dignity rather than pushing people back. I think it will make a really big impact on the world's psyche at the moment. So have you guys been looking at any of the refugee stories?
Can I give a ray of hope over here? In 1990, Israel absorbed more than 1 million Russians immigrants. And it was chaotic for a few years because engineers were cleaning streets and doing dirty jobs. But later on, the push that all this very qualified immigration brought was making a startup nation with the number one startup per capita in the entire world. So the people from Ukraine are extremely smart, extremely savvy, and whoever hosts them are going to enjoy a long-term. You should take them as gifts rather than a liability, if there's a ray of hope over there. Another ray of hope I saw in the Finnish railroads, that they allow everyone that has Ukrainian passport needing a long-distance pass, just show the passport and you get a free ride. So there are a lot of good people doing a lot of good things now. And if you look at that and you just focus on that, you say, we have some great things in our humanity.
Absolutely. That's what we were talking about at the beginning, that real hope that sort of comes through. For me, it comes through there. Moving on to sanctions. So we were talking a lot about sanctions last week and whether or not they would work. And there's obviously a lot of skepticism around the power of sanctions. And we've seen that in the past. They don't really work, or they just hurt the people. They're a huge part of this story. So just some of the highlights that have come up. Roman Abramovich has basically put Chelsea up for sale. Originally, he put it into a sort of a charitable trust. Russia has lost, or 70% of Russian banks have lost access to SWIFT, which is a payment messaging system. I'm sure Joe knows more about that. Shell and BP have both announced their exit from Russia, which is quite significant. The Russian oligarchs are moving their yachts to the Maldives as sanctions are being levied. Airbus and Boeing are closing operations. And I've seen that, I can't remember if it was Airbus or Boeing, are using their facilities for refugees. I just saw Accenture is closing its operations in Russia. And the Russian airlines basically are facing outcast status as jet makers freeze parts. The skies have closed down all around. The waterways, even the Turks have closed the waterways. And of course, we saw sanctions on the central bank, which resulted in an increase of 20% of interest rates immediately. So obviously, huge suffering for ordinary people. But we've also seen sanctions on a level and on a scale that has never happened before. So will it work? Will it help? Thoughts?
Well, I think it'll hurt the Russian people. I don't think it'll hurt Putin at all. And because he's got masses of money. And that's the biggest challenge with sanctions. But what sanctions end up doing is rallying the people against their leader. I think that's the idea. But that one's a tough one as well. The big piece of information I got was from my weather app, which is Carrot, which is you can adjust the level of abuse in the actual weather app. And this is the clean version. It said, you've screwed up if Switzerland are freezing your funds. So which was like the upshot of it all. But yeah, that's my the thing is, if you're going to put in sanctions, you need to go hard and fast and make it a statement that rattles. And it seems like that's what's happening.
Yeah,
if we're being skeptical and following the money and everything else, this could be just a grand excuse to move things around a little bit. But at the same time, like I said, my concern is, we've seen it with North Korea as well, when they put in sanctions, it doesn't change anything at the top. It just harms the people.
Worse, what happened is there's no vacuum, and the vacuum immediately goes to be filled, like in Iran. So when Iran had sanctions, the people that step in were the Chinese, and the Chinese, just as smart, they buy it in a cheaper way. So now the Chinese are getting also to trade in yuan 7% of the oil already. So the Chinese are stepping in. Any vacuum calls for them just to sit and wait for them to punch each other, so they're going to benefit from it.
Yeah, the China side of the story is pretty interesting. I mean, there's some people believe that China will be the country that goes in and agrees the diplomacy. But there's but then a lot of the sanctions that are at play, apparently China's watching it, because if the same comes and lands on China, it's going to have a massive impact too. So I don't know. It's but a couple of the articles in Reuters, Russian economic collapse will be hard to avoid. Another one in The Guardian, the damage is done. Russians face economic point of no return. And there's a really great piece in The Atlantic called How Russian Sanctions Work. I really encourage, if you want to understand the sanctions side of the conversation, that's a really good article to read. Okay, so here's another big part of the story. So cyber attacks, the technology industry, and the business world. So there's so many parts to this. But first of all, so Anonymous, I'm sure you guys have seen them. They've got the white mask, came out at the beginning of the week and said they're going after the Russian government infrastructure. And we've heard them say that they're going to do things before, but we haven't really seen the outcome. This time, apparently, they've really had some impact. But there's also another group of hackers in Ukraine and Russia working together to take out government infrastructure. So the cyber activity is pretty interesting. Then Elon Musk responded to a tweet from the Vice Prime Minister of Ukraine and has switched on his Starlink satellite, which gives Ukrainians access to the internet, which is obviously a huge benefit in a time like this. Google disabled its maps in the Ukraine after it realized that it could show Ukrainian troop movements. So it took away that window for the Russians. The creative industry, they've all come together and they're running an information war, which is pretty impressive to read about. There's a lot more pressure on Silicon Valley to do more, to have an impact. There's a Russian billionaire behind a company called Revolut FinTech app who's published an anti-war letter. There was something published the day before, and then the next day he went out and it was a much bigger statement against war, and he's based in the UK. Another one, the teen who tracked Elon Musk's private jet on Twitter is now chasing Russian oligarchs in their jets, which apparently are like 747s, these massive, massive things. But one of the ones I really thought was brilliant was there's a keyboard army that are basically using the restaurant review sites to leave information that people can't get access to in Russia, so that people are getting their access to the outside world's information through things like TripAdvisor. So I thought that was pretty interesting.
Yeah. The creme brulee was delightful, and please be careful on Route 75.
That's the Kremlin brulee.
The Kremlin brulee. There you go.
Nice. Any of those sort of stories that caught your attention? I've that's probably one of the ones that been enjoying as from
the more
from an
important thing I
intellectual
think about
perspective.
the move by Elon Musk is that he's also giving Russians access to the internet, a different version of the internet, as in like, because they're so close anyway, right? So I think the discussion was how the miscalculation. This was from the Aussie guy, Aussie bloke. I can't remember what is
Aussie Man
his
Reviews.
Aussie Man Reviews, right? The miscalculation was having soldiers with phones, right? The Russian soldiers have phones. And if you think about what Elon Musk has done, basically, is given access to the internet for everyone, not just not just people on the ground on one side, but everyone as well. And because of the kind of communication that's being made in Russia, having access to this can be a bit of a game changer as well. I mean, it gives those who want to at least to hear the opposite side of the story a chance to hear it, because you hear some of the interviews with Russians and who are getting that one perspective. Like, for instance, all the coverage in Russia does not show Russian aggression. It just does not make it an attack. It does not make it an invasion. It is all defensive. It doesn't show any of the aggression on in its footage. The narrative is very, very different and quite acceptable, as in like if you combine that with what's happened before, there's a bit of Dan Brown narrative going on, right? There's some basis for the truth. I mean, if you think about what NATO has been doing all these years, if you're aware of that, you go like, yeah, they've been doing all the things they shouldn't have been doing. The neighbor now wants to join the evil empire. So if you think about it from a Star Wars perspective, now you've got the planet next door is now being part of the Rebel Alliance, right? So if you have the right perspective on things, you can see why in Russia it would make sense that this is the truth, that Russia is being threatened, and all they're doing is defending themselves. But at least with access, they're going to be able to see different aspects of it. They're going to be able to see, the footage, or some of the footage, at least something to create that doubt that maybe there's something more to this. I mean, I think what you need is a middle ground. It doesn't have to be either way per se, but I think if people are at least more down the middle, there's a chance for something to happen.
Yeah. Oh, there's an article.
I was going to say, did you see the speech made by the Kenyan? I think it was the Kenyan ambassador to the UN. I think it was a Kenyan. Anyway, he was, or the Kenyan foreign minister. But it was a wonderful, wonderful piece about, because everyone was saying their bit. But what he did, he was talking about how Africa inherited boundary lines drawn up by colonists who were leaving. And they had, on one side, they had their families, and everybody else is on this side of the border, and they're on this side of the border. And if they were trying to redefine the boundary lines to what they thought it should be, which is his interpretation of what Putin is doing, and how it was silly for them to have, acquiesced to Ukraine's borders being like this, then if Africa was doing that, then there would be non-stop bloodshed. And when you look at the history of Africa, that has certainly been the case in a lot of instances when that strategy is tried. But what he said is, what they're doing is they're going, okay, we've inherited that. That's where the line is. But maybe we can operate together as at a level above a line drawn on a map, where we can coexist in an effective way that creates opportunity for all of Africa, that we're not competing against ourselves here, but that we're taking on something above and beyond that with and playing our part in a bigger world. And the way that he articulated it was erudite, eloquent, and quite frankly, very, very powerful.
That sounds great.
I'll share with you a crazy
really
idea. What if one day Europe will take Russia as part of the European Union? I think if there is, we are seeing polarity that may not be necessary there. Everybody there is European. And what we offer now, what we need now is letters and hope and ability to put the things together. And instead of just saying that we're going to need a little bit of more war. We need a little bit more delighting ourselves and others.
Yeah, we need different solutions, right? And when you look at what's ahead for humanity and the challenges that we have to overcome, we need to have a different attitude. We need a different world and a different way of thinking about how the world operates. And it's great to hear that perspective on Africa. And it's the same India, Bangladesh, Pakistan. I mean, the colonial powers got so much wrong, and it's never been righted. And
if I was an alien coming to Earth, I would say, what are these guys doing? Yeah. They don't understand they need to go together. They have a habitat for themselves to save. The world going to stay after they're going to be demised, and they are kicking each other instead of uniting and have more aggressive goals for sustainability. So I would be very puzzled about human stupidity.
The alien would say they need us to sort of almost invade them for them to actually get over their squibbles and squabbles and actually do something useful.
Yeah,
we've already put our defense up around the world anyway. It's all the debris that we've got floating about in space that will wipe out any alien armada. But
there's loads of really, really great deep and thoughtful pieces on this war. One in the New York Times is "This Cold War could be worse than the last," and it sort of talks about how this is the very first war fought on TikTok, and it's a really interesting perspective we were talking about technology before. Another one that I found really, really interesting is Putin's attack on Ukraine is a religious war, and that was a perspective I had never heard before, and it's about the breakup of the Russian Orthodox Church and the formation of the Ukrainian Orthodox Church. So that's worth having a look at. And then there's some really good ones. And the final one is Autocracy is Winning. That's in the Atlantic. I recommend everyone have a read of that, because obviously autocracy winning is not a good thing for the world. But that's kind of my wrap up so far of the week as far as Ukraine goes. So anything else you guys want to add?
If you want to talk about delight.
No, we're going to go into that. Just going to do the environment and society section, and then we'll go into that, because I think we need to hear all the bad news first. So then we can be in the right mindset for a turnaround.
What we're doing right now is setting Avi for a tremendous success, because it's only against darkness that the candle becomes extremely bright, right? So
exactly. It's a strategy. We break them down before we build them up again, right? So we've got some more breaking down to do.
Unless, all right, of course, so we'll switch off by then.
Which of course they're not going to do, Tim. Okay, environment and society. So like I said, I didn't read anything on COVID this week for the first time since the pandemic began, which is quite amazing. But in the environment, Facebook is exacerbating the climate crisis. So look out for that one by failing to label misinformation. So basically there's these top 10 voices that the Facebook keeps an eye on, and they're just not even acting on what they're doing. And they're known for spreading disinformation around the climate crisis. I'm an Australian. I'm obviously been keeping an eye on Australia as the rain bomb hit, and that was what the Queensland Premier called it. I know that 10 have died so far. It ran through Queensland. It went into New South Wales, and of course those rivers are all connected, and it'll be heading into Victoria. I was in Australia 10 years ago when pretty bad flooding. That was bad at the time. This is even worse. At the time, it was called a 1 in 100 year event. This has been called a 1 in 100 year event, and here we are 10 years later. Apparently, the Australian government says now is not the time to talk about climate change. In response, yeah.
In '83, there was the coldest winter in Israel, and the highway was flooded. And the weathermen say it's 1 in 100 years. The next year, when it happens, they challenged him for the 1 in 100 years. They say this one is for the last 100. This one is for the next 100.
Yeah. Okay. Some good news. Countries have agreed an historic move to draw up legal treaty to end plastic production. So in the content that I'm going to share, it talks about plastic production was expected to double by 2040, but in other research, it's expected to triple. We all know that we're in a waste crisis. We can all see the beaches and the oceans full of plastic. It's revolting where we are. And this is a real victory because the petroleum industry have obviously been banking on plastic as a part of their future. So it's a real victory. And this is not about, the world still will need plastic, but it's the plastic that's created for that single use, just a brief moment of existence before it goes into the trash. And there's no infrastructure in place to clean it up. You know, it's we all know we're in a mess. So I thought that was a brilliant piece of news. You guys? Yeah, thumbs up from Avi. All right, IPCC report. The second of the third IPCC report has been released. It has hardly gotten the coverage it deserves. An article in The Guardian, IPCC issues bleakest warning yet. Antonio Guterres from the Secretary General of the United Nations said the suffering outlined in the report is a damning indictment of failed climate leadership. It is also a harrowing tale of rank injustice. 3.5 billion people, almost half the world's population, live in countries that are going to be highly vulnerable to climate impacts. And these are typically the countries that have not been the ones responsible for the emissions that have created the problem. So one of the predictions is if global temperatures soar above 4 degrees C, above pre-industrial levels, Africa will endure a 118-fold increase in extreme heat events. It's going to become an unlivable continent, right? While Europe will just get a 4-fold increase, which sort of gives you an idea of how it's going to play out. Have you guys had a chance to have a look at the report or some of the summaries of the report?
So that's Africa is 100 times, Europe is 4 times. What about the other continents?
I haven't got that in front of me, but I'm just giving you one example.
That's a stark difference. I hadn't gone into it in any detail.
Yeah.
Well, the good news, if there's going to be a nuclear bomb, it will create a cooling effect. So,
or it will destroy all life on Earth by putting temperatures up to 8 degrees, right? So one way or another.
So the bomb will level the great playing field between Europe and Africa.
Well, as with all things, you need the right number of bombs to go off. I think that's where we're trying to find the middle ground right now, right? Sorry for that dark moment, but again, setting Avi up for success.
Yeah, I think the right number of bombs is no bombs.
Yep.
The weird thing is though that the humor that we're portraying is not a disrespect for what's going on. It's almost I feel it's a sense of, in one sense, it's a feeling like there's nothing we can do about it, so let's just go on with life as usual. Apart from trying to inform, trying to encourage particular elements of action, like we talked about at the top of the show, but it just feels like we're at the behest of small groups of people who are, large gorillas beating themselves up while the rest of the clan sort of scurries to the trees and waits for the end to happen and somebody to be left in charge. It feels like we're small animals in a bigger clan, and it's frustrating, and like you said at the top of it, we can dwell in the fear of it. We need to acknowledge it and face it, but and so the reason why I mentioned that is I don't want people to think that we're making light of this. In such a way. We're just I guess we're kind of just dealing with it.
Well, the reason Aussie Man Review was asked, well, he did his Ukrainian video, was because the Ukrainians reached out to him and said, we need humor. Humor is really important. And I agree with that. We can't be serious all the time. We should be able to talk about the darkest things with a smile on our face, because what else can we do, right? We can sit here in terror, but yeah, so the IPCC report, and I haven't seen the country breakdowns, which they usually do. So how is it going to impact Australia, Singapore? So keep an eye out for that, but just go to the IPCC website. But basically they're saying that obviously adaptation is a big part of what we're going to have to do now because we're out of time. But the risk is so great now that no seawall or technological fix will save us, and I'll give you a few points. But this climate emergency dwarfs any challenge humanity has ever faced. And everything has to change for us to overcome this, and it has to happen this decade. And we're not, like Joe, every week we'll talk about the climate emergency, and you'll give me your perspective, and I know that you're not even remotely sort of thinking about what needs to change yet. And I know that, and you represent to me a lot of people. They're just like, we're just going to continue with life as normal, but life as normal cannot continue if we want to overcome the emergency that we face. So we still need people to really realize this. There is sacrifice ahead, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad thing. You know, we can create a better world. And if we're stuck in cynicism, if we're stuck in war, we're not going to be in the mindset to be able to do that. And that's, you know, the courage of leadership that Zelensky's shown potentially could make some people around the world step up into their vocal leadership and their active leadership on tackling some of the biggest crises the world is facing in the climate space. So, I mean, what do you guys think?
Tax is what I think. I think that greed is the biggest power in this world, with exception of love, of course. But if we could get greed to change the economics of, put the real cost of plastic on plastic as tax, as global tax, it will change within a very short time. Manufacturers will need to, people that sell Coca-Cola and others will have to change and switch if the tax is going to be high enough and global enough, and deposit about that could give actually money to homeless to collect it. But if we leave it to just goodwill of all of us, and we are oblivious to that at the end of the day, there is a big fall, and let's just enjoy the ride meanwhile. So global tax is a good thing to think about and implement it very, very fast. Make it painful and costly to produce things that harm our environment.
Yeah, factor the full price of the cost into the price of the products, right?
That's what government needs to do. That's what we need the governments to do.
Yeah. And so there's another article in the BBC. So if you just want to get the top 5 points that sort of come through very strongly in the IPCC report, the first is things are way worse than we thought. And I think for people like me, I know for Tim, for Avi, you've been paying attention for a long time. For a lot of people, we've known this for a long time, and people aren't. They might think we're a little bit nuts when we go out and we talk about it, but you know, I've been talking about way worse than we thought for a long time. So now I'm feeling happy because the IPCC report shows that it's correct. So it's happening faster than they predicted it was going to happen, and it's happening. Climate-related impacts are hitting the world at the high end of what modelers once expected, and much more quickly than previously assessed by the IPCC. So you have to remember, this is not just the scientists; it's also governments approving the release of this document, and that's why I've always known it's a lot worse than as the reports have said, because in order for the language to be signed off by all these countries around the world, apart from the Ukrainians who had to go into bomb shelters, but otherwise everybody else has signed this off. So it's a big deal. The other number 2 point was loss and damage gets scientific backing. So basically this is saying that the wealthy countries responsible for emissions are liable to pay for loss and damages in developing countries who are not responsible for the emissions. And obviously, you know, Africa is on the way to becoming uninhabitable. So what are we doing to prepare for that? Because that's going to be a mass migration moment, right? But it's always been controversial because the rich countries obviously do not want to pay for these losses and damages that they have contributed to. But that's part of the solution that we need to come up with looking forward. Number 3, technology is not a silver bullet. The use of some technologies designed to limit warming or reduce CO2 could make matters worse rather than better. There are also worries that machines that suck CO2 from the air could simply trigger the release of more warming gas, which I thought was really interesting. I hadn't heard that one before, that sort of point of view so strongly. Number 4, cities offer hope. I don't know if you guys have been looking at the Jakarta being moved into Kalimantan. Have you seen the story of the new city that's being built because Jakarta's sinking now? So cities offer hope, which I thought was interesting because I wasn't expecting that to be in the report. because cities can, as they grow, they can push for renewable energy, greener transport, greener buildings. This could limit destructive climate impacts that for millions of people. So how cities move forward. And then the final point 5, the small window is closing fast. While, the authors are obviously saying, yes, this report is bleak, they are convinced that the worst impacts can be averted if we act in time. The opportunity for action is only in this decade. It's not 2050 promises, it's now. And that's the last and final sentence in the report. This is it. This is the time. We need to act now. If we don't, all of these terrible, terrible scenarios will break out. So please pay attention to to the IPCC report. There's a lot of people, if you don't want to read the report, there's a lot of people talking about it, giving different perspectives on it. This is our chance. We need to move. Thoughts?
Well, my usual go-to is in terms of technology and stuff, and I know you've mentioned it there, but I feel that most times the reason why things don't stop or don't change is because someone's coming along and saying you've got to stop what you're doing right now. You got to stop what you're doing. Stop what you're doing. Whatever you're enjoying right now, you got to stop doing that. And I was thinking, what if we took an approach of you've got to do more than what you're doing right now, and not not in terms of so that there must be some kind of way to like if you talk about consumption, responsible consumption is responsible because of what you do after the fact. Could we try and redesign the way we do things so that if making people stop what they do is too difficult, then what if we just said, okay, well, do what you do, but now I'm going to incentivize you to do something else immediately after that, right? I mean, the Coca-Cola company, for instance, would be hard pressed to say, I'm going to ignore this if there's a chance to make millions of dollars building flats from plastic after the fact. If that's something that can be done, that'd be interesting. You turn used bottles into using technology and some other kind of stuff. You turn that into a precious resource. I mean, if you turn the plastic of the world into the new sand, like we're having a shortage of sand right now. How do we say, okay, well now, okay, we consume this way, and now what do we do after that so that we can do something better with it?
It's very smart what you say. It's a research by B.J. Fogg. He looked at something that is called tiny habit. And what he found in his research, by the way, the biggest habit that makes people happier is very interesting. Are you willing to be playful with me? So
nope,
I'm going to
ask
out. You. All right, team come back. So I'll ask you now.
Will this playful habit involve me having to turn off my camera?
No, please don't. So I would ask you in a second to close your eyes, and I'm going to say good morning. And what you need to do is to stand up from your chair and you say it's going to be a great day. All right. So close your eyes, and I'm going to say good morning. You open it. Good morning.
It's going to be a great day.
It's going to be a great day.
So this millions of people on his website said that this tiny habit made them really happier before they went. And another thing that he found out, that the way to get another habit is to connect it with something that you did before. So if you have the habit of brushing teeth and you want to have your tummy flatten, then just after you brush your teeth, then go to do your belly up. So what you say makes a lot of sense. For example, if you buy a new dress, take a dress that you stop using and put it for charity. So if you have this kind of thing, that makes a lot of sense what you say, Joe Augustine.
Yeah. Well, you will be noticing from Monday, I am going to launch every single day ideas on what we can all do to make a difference in the world. And it's individual things, and it's big things, small things. And I'm just going to do it every day until I run out of ideas. And I'm going to be looking for ideas from you guys. So feel free to share them. But yeah, I've already got 100. And I haven't even started looking into the podcasts we did, Tim, where you guys all shared different ideas. But it's just, every day, what are the habits that you can change? And they're not, it doesn't have to be big things. It's just, we have to live in harmony with nature, and we have to respect Earth. And if you're one of these people that goes through 5 plastic water bottles a day, and each of those water bottles can last in the environment for 500 years, and there is currently nowhere for that water bottle to go to be reused or turn into refugee housing or whatever, every year, that's a lot of individual waste. All of the, our toothbrushes last for 500 to 1,000 years. Every toothbrush we've ever bought is still here. Every piece of plastic ever created is still here. So it's just about us being much more conscious and in tune with the decisions and their impact, but also this being more in tune with the suffering that it's created. Like we're talking about fashion, the suffering in the human supply chain, the abuse, as well as the environmental abuse. And the fashion industry is so guilty of not making any changes, but so we buy different brands. We don't support those brands. We educate ourselves. We work harder. People always say to me, well, how do I know? I'm like, go and do the research. Go and hashtag end slavery now. Hashtag who made my clothes movement. There's so many movements that are going on, and we have to work harder. And everyone keeps wanting to be spoon-fed, and okay, I'm going to start spoon-feeding with ideas. But it doesn't mean I've got all the ideas. I just want to contribute to creating change. Climatarianism, have you heard it? Is a new word. It's a diet, and of course, if you're going to,
I love that one.
It's brilliant, right? So if you want to be a true climatarianism, how do you say it? Climatarian. Number one would be vegan, but not everyone can be vegan. So number two is vegetarian. Great. There's still some animal in that. But if you're going to eat meat, eat it locally. Source it from the farms in your country. Don't fly it in from Australia or Japan. Seafood. We've got to start looking at this. So there's
We Jews have different way of looking at seafood. We see the food, but we don't take the shrimps and all that kind of thing.
Yeah, it's pretty rare for me to eat seafood. I mean, it's pretty toxic these days. My husband has a tuna for his lunch, and I'm like, because it's better than eating gluten. I'm like, sure, daily dose of mercury. It's true, right? What we can't see, we want to ignore. But we've all got to just do what we can. And we build change from the bottom up. We drive it. The leaders aren't going to do it. We've got to drive it.
We are behind you, united behind you.
With me.
With you.
I'm very united behind you and with you, but to the point where I'm going to have to actually say goodbye for the show for today. But I will be attempting to listen in as I extricate myself. But thank you, Avi. I look forward to hearing what you have to say in the delight part a bit more. See you all.
All right, good luck with your work.
Thank you. I fly tonight too, by the way. So this is it's
everything.
I haven't been as paranoid about COVID as I have been this week because the flight was coming. Don't touch anything.
Yeah,
Australia.
Yeah, no, enjoy.
Is there any chance that we can just see what your passport looks like right now before you go? Because I think that's going to make this the viral moment of the week.
All right.
It got a wash. Nice.
It went through the wash, so now it looks like that. But you'll notice
that's pretty decent now.
It's actually this one now. Well,
oh, there you go.
Yeah. So I got a little emergency passport. And the new one's on the way. So the Australian embassy was fantastic. The next day the thing was available.
Wow.
So obviously a lot of Australians put their passport through the wash. It is flooding there at the moment, so there would be a lot of wet passports, I imagine.
Yes,
but,
that's true.
I'm going to the Sunshine State where the forecast is non-stop rain.
Yeah.
But
wonderful.
Anyway, I'm there to see Mum and Dad. Haven't seen them for a couple of years, and this is a small opportunity to be able to do it. But I've enjoyed the show so far. Bye.
Cool. See you, Dom.
Okay, bye-bye.
All right. So I think this might be the perfect time to move into delivering delight during challenging times. So, Avi, we've laid out some pretty challenging and grim sort of news stories, and the world's on the edge. People are on the edge. So help us learn how to deliver delight.
All right. So basically, you know it. And did I say what is the engine of delight? I guess I did. It's about contribution.
Contribution.
And I get the question very often that leaders ask me, what if I'm having negative thoughts and I have a terrible day? How can I be delighting? And I'll be happy to share a tip with you if you're a leader that sometimes have these feelings. And I'm going to ask you a question. On a bad day, when people ask you, how are you? What do you answer?
Usually, yes. Okay. I'm okay.
Oh,
yeah.
Oh, okay. And if you are with a customer and you're supposed to sell, what do you say?
Fantastic.
I wouldn't.
Fantastic. Oh, great.
Yeah.
And you know, the difference between how you feel and what you portray to be, this is the amount of energy that's going to be sapped out of you during the day, because you need to put up a show all the time. But what if I tell you 2 words that you add any word out after that, it's going to be uplifting for yourself, for others, and makes you authentic and vulnerable at the same time, but safe. Would that be cool?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So I'll ask you to play with me. I did this it's the first time that it happened to me is a few years ago. The HR director of the University of Dubai, Rawa, asked me that question. And I asked the entire audience to say, in a minute, I'm going to ask you to put your hands here as if they were the blinders of a horse. Because that's how we wake up. We wake up in the morning and we see everything that did not happen yet, the chores that we have to do, the problems that we tackle, the people that said this or that on us. And we narrow the things to worried from the beginning. But is that the reality that we live in? Let's make a trial. So what I'm going to ask you, once you put your hands, every time you're going to say yes, you move your hands 1 inch to the side, 1 inch up. Are you game? Yep. Let's start. All right.
All right.
1 inch to the side, 1 inch up.
Yep.
Yeah,
You can do
just
it,
go here. Put your hands here.
Okay.
All right. So
I'm just trying to think what the person who doesn't. Some people watch their videos without the volume up, and they're wondering what is going on right now.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. So, okay. So, all right. So, what happened? Did you wake up on a bed? Yes.
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 All right. That means that you have a bed. And you know that there's about 150 million people today that are homeless. Did you have sanitation? You have a toilet? Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. There's about 3 billion people that don't have decent sanitation.
Yeah.
Did you have food today?
Yes.
Yes. Are you safe today? Yes, you're in a safe place. We talked about war. There's about 115 million kids in the last 10 years that are refugees. Do you have a job and you can support yourself? And then there's 1.3 billion poor, with many of them below $2. Do you have electricity? There's about 759 million people they don't have. So if you do this, can you show me your hands like that? All right, maybe like that. Because at the end of the day, you're going to see this, the abundance that you're living. So if you have this, comparing to so many people, are you blessed? Yes or no?
Yeah,
absolutely.
And if you're blessed, can you be grateful for all the blessings that you have?
Yeah.
Okay, so ask me, Avi, how do you feel on a bad day?
How do you feel on a bad day?
Blessed and grateful and sad, which could be today because maybe I'm sad. Now, that opens me to know that in 90%, I'm okay. But the temporary thing that I'm feeling is okay. I can be sad. I can be mad. I can be glad. I can be angry. I can be frustrated. And when I tell this to people around me, they actually feel that I'm authentic and they could help me. And as being vulnerable, I say, I'm upset. I say, okay, you know what? I'm not going to pay attention to your tantrums today because I know that you told me that. And, you know, there are 4 types of people you're going to meet when you say that. The first one will think that you got too religious. The second one that wouldn't care. The third one that will really be interested to hear more about it, and that's a good thing. But the fourth one is the one that you're interested. You could see immediately the drop of energy in them and a sad face, because they don't feel that they are blessed. They don't feel that they are grateful. And if you could spend a few minutes with them and say, let me buy you coffee, let me listen to what's going on in your life, that will be the biggest thing that you could do also as a leader when you notice other people like that. And when you notice that your people are in that place of having a turmoil, sometimes sensing that, moving up from empathy, which is sensing, or compassion, which is the desire to alleviate someone else's pain, to kindness, and say, you know what, why don't you go back office and I'm going to take the front desk for you for this time. That's where, and this is a small tip that will help you in negative moments. The second thing that I would share with you, tips about delight. A lot of people are very skeptic because they have organization that at the top is very transactional. Money, bottom line, I don't care about you, just deliver. And they say, how can I be a delightful leader at a place that nobody really cares about me or my people? And the answer is, first, you chose to be here today. Hopefully you're talented and you could go somewhere else and you're just not just stuck. Consider delight as kind of an umbrella that you could use to shield all the negative things that happen above, and you handle it, and just take care of your own team and make your own team a delightful place where you take care of people, where you share with them the goodness, you have some fun, you have some joy, you connect, you help them to solve problems. That's what real delight is all about. So there's no excuse not to be delightful, just because somebody else up there is not. And give, even if though some people may try to abuse you. I call them the black holes of delight. The minute that you see that your hand is disappearing, you understand, okay, I got it. This is a person that I have to be very careful, and I need to put boundaries around that. Yeah, these are some delightful tips that people said that they were very helpful for that.
You're on mute there, Andrea.
Sorry. One of the things that you said at the beginning was the sort of saying, you know, I'm grateful for my life and I'm sad. I don't think that most people are really particularly interested in hearing what if you're in a good mood or not. They just want to hear, oh, I'm great. You know, that's all they want. And if you go any deeper, like you were talking about those 4 different types of audiences, where there's a small group that you can actually you can reach and have a deeper connection with because you were honest and authentic in how you were feeling. Do you think it's important to, rather than have the other people go, oh, that's a bit of a weird response, is it better to be a little bit more in tune with responding at the right time to the right people who potentially actually do want to have a deeper conversation?
Yeah, the last thing that you need to make other people to be a deposit place for your garbage. That's not the intention. But when you're working in a team together, if you can't be authentic with your team, if you can't share with them what's going on, and you may have tough moments. And actually, the greatest time to, if you really want to become more influential, at the time that people feel low and they have problems in their life, that's the best time to invest in them. That's the best time to lend them an ear. That's the best time to go to the funeral of the relative. That's the best time to show your support. But I do agree with you, Andrea, that you don't flood your problems on others. Being blessed and grateful doesn't mean that I'm floating on you. I acknowledge that I'm blessed. I'm acknowledged that I'm grateful. And I'm doing it in an uplifting way for you to know that I know that. But at the same time, I'm having a moment. I'm having a tough day. I'm having a tough week. I'm having a tough month. Maybe I'm a burnout. But that's the reality. But I know that I'm blessed and grateful. So once you start with it, you're already connecting, because you're not coming as a complainer. You're coming as someone that just want to be honest.
Yeah, and you clarified it by when you were talking about being part of a team, right? It'd be like, if you want to take it outside of the work, it's being part of a family. You know, to your husband or wife, how are you feeling today? I'm actually, Steve and I had an agreement all the way through COVID when we came downstairs in the morning that we said to the other one how we were feeling that day if we were off colour, because we've all gone through those times, and sometimes it's gone on for weeks where the other one said, yeah, I'm not there today. And then we say, what can I do? And we both need different things and different responses. But if you're close to people, I think that's beautiful advice.
And you know what? I do it all the time, and I can tell you that it's really opening a lot of doors for me, because people are very curious about blessed and grateful, and because I don't dump on them anything, but I say I'm blessed and grateful, and today I'm feeling so. And they are suddenly very intrigued what happened. But it comes not as flooding, but as kind of, this is what happened. Now it's up to them to decide whether they want to ask me about it or not. But I would not go and continue over there. But it's really connecting. It's really connecting conversation when you're able to be authentic and you don't lose all this energy. I can be blessed and grateful and having a terrible day. That's okay.
Yeah. I like the energy message. Joe, what about you? Do you reckon you could do it? I mean, you're not a fan of networking anyway, so I'm just sort of thinking, how would you feel? Obviously, within the family, it's different, but
well, I don't think it's obvious, because for me, this idea of fairness, I've been poisoned by fairness, I think, or a need for fairness since I was young, and unfortunately, what I do is I'm not capable enough of delivering unfair support to family and friends. I've been accused of that. I don't think I'm accused of that. I think I'm resented for it. But I in my own self-analysis, I realized that, okay, I'm not biased enough to my friends and my family. I'm not prepared to cut corners, as it were, on values and facts and stuff like that. For that purpose. And this past week, I actually came across a term which I really am taking apart and trying to take on board as well. And it's from Steve Pink. I can't remember his name. I think Steve Pinkerton. I think it is the guy I talked about, the linguist as well as the optimist. He says there's room for benign hypocrisy. And I think
benign what?
Benign hypocrisy. That's and I was going to take it a little bit further and say, not call it benign, but call it benevolent hypocrisy. Where we say something perhaps that we completely don't mean, but we try and do it in as real a way as possible. But the reason we do it is benevolent. It's the way we do something for somebody else just because it's the better thing to do. And we put aside things like the need for logic and perhaps fairness. And that's the challenge. It's a big one for me. It's a hard one to do.
At the same time, you could be uplifting. At the same time that you give good, tough messages. I think that a lot of people confuse criticism with feedback, and criticism is something that puts people down.
Oh, you just gone.
Oops, sorry. I think I pressed the button by accident. Sorry, that's me. Sorry.
You don't want to hear that.
It was intriguing. It was intriguing. We saw your lips move. We knew wisdom was going by, and we were missing it.
Actually, when we worked for our book, we interviewed 220 leaders in 37 countries and 6 continents. And a big shout to Daniel Lee, who did majority of the work, the first-time leadership. We find out a lot of things about leadership, and the first thing that we heard is people don't want you to be likable, and we thought that as a leader you're supposed to be likable. But all the leaders, all of them, said likability is liability if it is a goal. It's a result. What we want you to be is we want you to be authentic. We want you to develop them. We want you to do the right thing, because If your goal is to be likable, you're actually going to cheat a lot just to do that, and everything might collapse. You're not going to be able to do the right thing. But as a result of being a person of values, being respected, being hardworking, and uplifting everybody else, you're going to get to be liked. But we didn't choose you for likability. Likability is a result. And then I can tell you that happiness, money, success, love, and trust are all results of the right habits. If you have the right habits of doing the right thing, you're going to earn each one of them. And if you just focus it as a goal, you're going to be exhausted.
You know, you were talking about the difference. Yeah, no, it does. The difference between feedback and criticism. So, you know, I've been in business for 30 years, you guys too, right? I think some people give their feedback, and it is criticism because they're not very good at giving feedback. And so I think that gets confused. They go, oh, but I'm just giving feedback. You know, I'm just giving feedback. And I'm like, no, you're being an asshole.
I love what you say. And here's what we found. We talked to the chief marketing officer of Airbnb, and what he said is that they have something that is called RTF, real-time feedback. And I think what we don't understand is that we need to ask each person, how do you like to have your feedback? Some people are very sensitive, and you can't tell them that they are sensitive. What happened is that you are insensitive if they are sensitive as a leader. So you can ask people, how would you like your feedback? Some people like the sandwich. Massage me a little bit, then tell me, and tell me gently. Some people like me, I'm an Israeli, or if you're Dutch, we want just to know what's going on, don't get around. So a good question to ask is, how would you like to have your feedback? And be holding, feedback is like Aikido. Aikido doesn't have any offensive move. It just have a defensive move. So you take someone that needs to do something else and you put him in the right place, but you make sure that person doesn't fall on the ground. Because if they fell to the ground, that is criticism. If you were effective and that person takes your messages and do something and you help them to do the things the way that they need to do, then it's feedback. That's the difference. Criticism puts you down, feedback puts you up. And you're right, 100%, Andrea, is the way you do it and adopt it, because different people need it in a different, and you also need to do the timing right. Sometimes the timing sucks. That's not the time to give feedback. That's time to support.
Yeah, right. I like that. Joe? Any?
Well, I find the that's the gap that's hard to fill, right? I mean, it's the gap between high performance and expecting a lot from your team, and then there's this kind of I'm going to maybe use another term here, but it's a benevolent, not hypocrisy, but a kind of condescension, right? It's you know, you give room for lack of performance. You don't point out these things, and I just maybe what it was is I just brought up in an environment where I was thinking about just truly high performance, right? I want to get the best, the high end performance of all together. I mean it's something I left behind. I mean it took a while for me to detox myself on that, but you know I kind of I think I feel for the person who has really high standards, who would just like to have a kind of filter where people who have the same high standards come in, and maybe design an environment where they go like, you know, okay, this is the high performance room, and if you don't feel it today, don't come in.
I can tell you that you have to be careful as a leader. You have to have boundaries. If you don't have boundaries, especially in some countries in Asia, if you give too many concessions for the fourth grandmother that died this month, with a lot of compassion, you're going to end up with non-performing team. So you have to have your boundaries. Boundaries are kind of kindness. If you don't put boundaries and people fall into a hole because they did not know that that's a no-no for you, you have to balance boundaries with wisdom to know when you're going to drive someone to the wall and then you're going to lose them. And what you do is the benevolent thing. For example, I had a guy working for me, and he was depressed for 3 months because he lost his girlfriend. And I had to weather it, understanding that this is natural. And that person was the top performer for years for me because he loved the fact that I supported him during that time. So you need to sometimes let go consciously because you know that person needs that time. But he's a top performer that is in a temporary problem, and you need to take care of them. Yeah. And that's it. But at the same time, in normal time, put the boundaries. You don't go there back.
Yeah. I think the point that you made earlier about treat everybody differently, right? The education system needs to evolve so that it's like individual lessons. And my children are lucky to get an education that suits them individually within a school environment. I know the majority of children don't get that. But in a work, like you were saying, ask people how they want feedback. And I think that's so critical. Manage people how they need to be managed, not how you want to manage. It's, we've sort of built a society that's on, it's we're always on the other side, right? It's, we put our views, like I wrote a blog last week, just be conscious of being in tune with the moment. It's not about what you want to say, it's about what your audience wants to hear. And this is because a whole bunch of people have been running up on LinkedIn, like they were finding a lot of the participation very insensitive. And so then people were responding going, how dare you say that? You've got no right to say that I can't say whatever I want. But the actual reality of the message, which was getting lost on the respondees, was this is doing you harm. It's harming your reputation, especially if your audience is all over what's going on in Ukraine. If that's what they're paying attention to, and you're doing top 10 tips to be a superstar on LinkedIn, you look disconnected from the reality that they're facing, and therefore you're going to lose their respect, right? So we always kind of look at it from our point of view, and the change that needs to happen is how do we look at it from other people's point of views?
Absolutely, Andrea. I just want to tell everybody that listens is that I'm no saint and I make mistakes, and everything that I told you, sometimes I fail to do because I'm human, and you need to forgive yourself as well and come clean with other people. When you make that mistake, you can apologize and say, I'm sorry, I should have given you this feedback in a different way. I made a mistake, and let me buy your lunch or dinner. That's maturity. Don't expect yourself to be fantastic all the time. You're going to be triggered. You're going to have people with deadlines onto you. So just be kind to yourself as well.
Yeah.
Delight yourself as well.
Yeah. And with the climate crisis, we're all going to be, we need billions of people being imperfect, not billions of people being perfect, right? So, that pressure as well, so a final message to everybody out there. There's a lot of people really struggling with how to cope with this moment in time. And people obviously are really struggling with mental health issues. How can people in the world help, on social media and in person? How can they help lift people up at this time? Any final delight message for them?
I could say that I'm extremely lucky. I have a mentor that is called Lenny Rabbit, and he finds one of the way to delight is maybe not to be a jerk. The first thing that you try to do is not to hurt other people, and just find some comedies, wake up with a good song. If you want, I have lists of happy songs for you that you could just message me and I'm going to give it to you, or you're going to look for that. And, everybody going to give you tips how to be happy. But the first thing is try not to be miserable. And the tip that I gave you, the engine of delight, when I was depressed, when I lost everything, people told me that you can't love other people if you can't love yourself. And that's the biggest bullshit I ever heard. Sometimes when you feel problems with yourself, the best thing that you could do is be of use to others, contribute to others, volunteer to do something good. You still have your kids, they still love you, so love them. You can control what you can control. Focus on the good stuff that you could do. And when you are in the doing of love, you are surrounded by love. Love will come to you. So stop listening to all the guys that criticize your personality. And you can criticize a mistake, but not your personality, and just move on. You make mistakes, you learn, you move on.
Yeah.
I love the insight on that. I like the idea so much of I've seen it so much as a cop out, as people are trying to work themselves out, and so they say they're incapable of doing the next thing. And I think it's one of those things where it does seem like the truth, as in like the less wise truth is you have to love yourself before you can love others. And I think the wisdom is actually, as you love others, you begin to love yourself, because you think, hey, this is what I'm doing.
The whole loving yourself thing was always a struggle for me growing up, because it just seemed vain. So I struggled with the concept of it even for a long time. But the other thing that I've been thinking about a lot lately is mind your mind. And it's the words you say to yourself, but it's also the words that you say or think about others. And if you can clean that out, and anything that comes out, or even a thought in your mind, if it's negative towards somebody else, try and stop it, because I think that's poisons us.
I invented the terminology that says reverse gossiping. It's the art of saying good stuff behind somebody else's back.
Right.
And it's fabulous boomerang, because when you say something good behind the back of someone, and that someone knows that someone, he says, I just met Avi and he said such great thing about you. Now imagine who's going to get the business.
Yeah. But I think the words that we say to ourselves and to other people, and even think about them, I think if we could get that under control, I think that's the path to kindness. I see so many people, and their faces are just, the bitterness is on their face, and everything that comes out of their mouth. They're very difficult people to be around. They're not bad people. They've had a hard path, right? And everything that comes out of their mouth is negative, and you're like, you want to talk about losing energy. When I'm in groups with people like that, I leave that. I'm exhausted.
They're energy vampires.
Yeah. But I don't think they want to be. I just don't think they know how to escape. And I think if you can make a conscious decision to track what you say and what you think, and if it's negative towards anybody, even yourself, that's what you've got to get under control. And look around, look at the beauty of this amazing world, right? Avi,
I lost my track of thought. I was trying, in between muting microphones and listening to you. I lost my own train of thought there.
End of a busy week. Avi, thank you so much for sharing that. I really appreciate it. That's cool. Any final bits of news that sort of jumped out to you? For me, one of the ones was Satya Nadella's son died this week, and obviously he's the CEO of Microsoft today, and I don't know, the way he's talked about his son, I've always found really quite beautiful. So I thought that was quite a poignant story that I thought was worth mentioning. And any stories that made you laugh or cry or anything this week other than what we've talked about? Nothing? Joe?
I'm trying to think about the podcast I was listening to. I was listening to a podcast about the world's or the US's worst maritime wartime disaster, and it's the sinking of the USS Indiana, and what a story it was, and how bizarre that a warship that had that much to do with the end of the Second World War was hardly even thought about at the end of the Second World War. They had one final mission before they were sunk by a Japanese sub. And if you haven't heard about them before, you probably wouldn't have heard about them before, because until quite recently, all they were just one line in the history books. They were the warship that secretly delivered the parts for the atomic bomb that they used in Hiroshima. They landed it in the Philippines, and when they came out of there in the night seas, they were sunk by a Japanese sub. But there were so many stories about leadership in that particular situation, and the tragedy of war. And it's just the context of me struck me as in a ship that had 1,200 men on board, was sunk as a matter of course, and all everyone was doing was just their job. The submariner captain, had been trying to further his career, and this would have been a great a great thing on a resume, really, and in times of war. And he went ahead and was successful with the sinking of this ship that was the length of 2 football fields. And in that one, well, not in that one moment, but in the moment that followed, in the days after, basically about 900 men perished. But it was also about the story that had to be solved after that. There was actually a court martial as they tried to blame this whole thing on someone, and they blamed it on the captain, or not the captain, but the person, I think it was captain of the ship. And he was blamed for it. He was, and at the trial, a very interesting witness came to speak on his behalf in defense of him, and it was actually the Japanese submariner, the captain. And he said he was actually saying that it wouldn't have made a difference, because the main thing that it was being court-martial about was not zigzagging in the sea at that particular point, which is the kind of thing you do to avoid submarines. And he had actually gone ahead and done that because he was told by his higher ups that it was a safe lane, and so it was late at night and there was no need to do that, and so he did not do the zigzagging, and that sort of they thought allowed the submarine to attack it. And the Japanese came forward to say that, it wouldn't have made a difference. It's because we were just there at the right time. He was heading right for us, and we would have got him. I mean, that was the whole thing. And it was an interesting story about how years on, the families of the Japanese side as well as the American side would come together for the reunions to commemorate the deaths and the lives of those people who survived.
So maybe on that note, we should hope that the Russian and the Ukrainian will realize that they're the same family. I think that the biggest worry from the intelligence that I read is that Putin is putting Chechen armies that are not Russian at the front because he's afraid that the Russian will have feelings. But I love the picture of the old lady that is giving a flower to a Russian soldier, and maybe that's the beginning of a hope.
Yeah.
Well, I hate to be that guy, but that story is actually a very feisty old woman who says you better swallow some seeds so that when you die, flowers will grow out of you. Which it's feisty, but not quite the same story though. Maybe it's a different old lady you're talking about.
So one final piece of news. I'm off for a girls' weekend in Bangkok this week, and one of the articles shared on the WhatsApp chat was Moët champagne bottles laced with fatal doses of ecstasy. So keep an eye out for that. We won't be drinking Moët, I don't think, this weekend. All right, what do you? I'm still watching the Formula One. Steve's about to go to Australia, so I'm going to have 2 weeks where I can watch what I want on TV. But I am still enjoying it. It is amazing, this Formula One series on Netflix. What are you guys watching, listening to, reading? What's distracting you from the world at the moment?
Well, that was the podcast. It was against all odds, I think it's called, and it is if you just do it, it's the story of the sinking of the Indiana. It's on Spotify, I believe.
Right.
I'm taking a page at a time of 2 books. One of them is Conversation with God, and one of them is about Ritz-Carlton, and I have pile of books that I need to reach, but as dyslexic, a page a day is what I can do.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Is this your first time on? Is this your first time reading Conversations with God?
Oh yes, and it's very slow because I need to understand it, and sometimes I find myself reading the same page 3, 4, 5 times to just understand and connect to it. But I definitely understand that when you come from a place of abundance. Even before I read the book, I was thinking, if you're praying basically for love, for abundance, for success, for health, then whatever your religion is just a language of speaking with God. And I thought that all of us, when we're praying and asking for ourselves, are God consumers. Just give me. And if God is any kind of a parent to us, what do parents want to? They just want to be proud of you. They just want you to be happy. And if you come to your parents and you're grateful rather than asking, then that is what we call in Hebrew nachat, is the joy and the sense of pride and satisfaction that you have when your kids are doing well. That's all. So I'm rewiring my mind, instead of asking and praying for something for me, to thank for what I got. And well, instead of being God consumer, maybe to do a little bit of good stuff in mentoring and so on, and trying to add value to others. And I'm totally humbled to be in the presence of bigger givers and people that I look up to, the trio of you, with all the things that you have done. And as we say in my country, I haven't started learning what you can afford to forget.
Very kind. All right, so let's wrap it up. Thank you so much to everyone for joining. Thanks to Avi. We didn't get the troll army attacking us this week, which was a bit of a relief. Even though Joe couldn't see what they were saying last week for some reason. That none of those comments that appeared in that feed exist anywhere on any feed that I can find beyond StreamYard. So I don't even know where they come from or where they are. So it's very bizarre. But anyway, I really appreciate everyone being here. I'm going to upload this onto the podcast if people prefer to listen to the audio version. Super grateful to Avi for joining us and sharing his wisdom. To Joe, Tim, have a great time in Australia. I'm going to have a fun girls' weekend. It's time to get out there and celebrate life a little bit. But stay grateful. And we'll see you soon. All right.
Yeah. Thank you very much, guys.